while the spring portal has been fairly tame at most places, Miami has been loading up in the spring portal with a few different types of guys. And I think it's interesting to have a conversation about like what Miami is going to be this year based on how this roster is constructed. Because I was watching the Cane Sport guys and their show last night or this morning, and they were talking about, and I hadn't thought about it this way, but at this point in year 4 under Mario Cristobal, they were a little surprised that they're going this transfer heavy. And like Keontae Scott is the latest pickup. He was at Auburn last year. He had actually gone to Houston for the spring, reunites with Zach Etheridge, who was the DB's coach at Auburn and at Houston before. He's at Miami now. But Keontae Scott was a really good nickel for Auburn in 2023. Wanted to play boundary corner last year, did not play well, ended up, getting benched. So like the assumption is he's going to play nickel at Miami, and he should be fairly productive there because he was an all SEC nickel when he was playing nickel at Auburn. So, but you've got him, Kamal Bonner, a linebacker from NC State, Sharmar Brown, the North Dakota State running back
Pokemon character.
Right, exactly. Jacoby Thomas from Tennessee, who probably was going to start at safety for Tennessee coming out of the spring. Bert Auburn, the former Texas kicker who had probably lost his job and needed to go find a job. Like everybody's got a little bit different situation. Like Sharmar Brown was really good at North Dakota State and was a true free agent type. Like I'm maybe starter. And I don't know if he's starter quality here because like Miami still has Mark Fletcher. So they've got some good players already. But the question is, are they too transfer heavy? And I'm not just talking about what they brought in the spring. Like their entire secondary probably is going to be transfers, most of whom they brought in the winter. So that's the question with Miami.
There's a lot to unpack here.
Because if you look at the players they got, like these are a lot. Most of these are really good players that their old teams didn't want to lose. Now, like the Bert Auburn thing, he'd lost his job, and Steve in San Antonio says, is it fair to say Bert Auburn is only getting good jobs because of his fabulous lettuce? By the way, he's not a good kicker anymore. He's not a good kicker. Listen, kickers, they have their ups and downs.
He's a 3-year starter. Like I don't remember. I mean, he hit some pretty big kicks, didn't he?
Right, but he was losing his job. Like the reason he's leaving Texas is he didn't have a job at Texas. So, but that's not the case with most of these guys Miami's bringing in. Most of the guys Miami's bringing in are guys that we're going to start where they were. The old team did not want to lose them. Like Kamal Bonner was at NC State was a guy who came in because the starter ahead of him got hurt last year, and Bonner played really well. Now that starter is back this year, but they certainly didn't want to lose Bonner. They had plans for him. So I'm interested. Like, and Zechariah Poyser is another one. He's not a spring portal edition. He's a winter portal edition. He was an all-conference DB at Jacksonville State, and like a lot of SEC schools wanted him. Miami wanted him, and Miami ended up getting him. The question is, because you and I have had this argument about roster construction in the NIL era, is are they leaning a little too transfer heavy, or is this a good mix of guys they brought in? Because they have some elite guys that they brought in out of high school.
So this is kind of an interesting discussion. First of all, let's start from the top. Do you mind? I'm
sure.
Excited about this. 12 days ago, before these 7 new transfers came in, what did we think Miami was going to be this year? Let's have an honest conversation about that.
Pretty good still.
You think we're going to be like a 9-win team-ish, 8-9 win team, or do you think 10-11 wins?
I'd say between 8 and 10, depending on how things shook out.
Yeah, I thought so. Last year, I was high on Miami. Like at this time last year, I thought Miami was going to go to the playoff, and I ranked them in the top 10 of my preseason poll, and it drove people crazy. I'm not nearly as high on Miami as I was a year ago at this time, and I think a large part of that too is because I'm a Carson Beck truther. I don't know that. I think he's a good quarterback. I don't think he's a great one, and I think they lost a great one. But I now think I'm ready to inch toward the 10-win situation. I don't know how things are going to look. I think Notre Dame's probably going to beat them in the opener. But then you have a coin flip game against Florida, depending on what Florida is, and then there's a schedule there that's there for the taking. Like Miami could be a 10-2 playoff team potentially this year.
What is Miami's toughest ACC game? Is it Louisville?
I don't know. I have no idea what Florida
SMU
State,
maybe.
I don't know what
Florida
At
SMU
State.
probably.
Got to go to SMU. So here's the deal, though, Andy. I feel like when you're transfer portal heavy, it means you're reliant on replacing big time players that were carrying your team year over year, and you don't know who's going to be in.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a lot of these Miami pickups are, at some spots crucial and necessary, but at other spots luxury. And I think that like this is not overly reliant. Like I didn't have that thought. And I think that in the transfer portal in general, we do a huge disservice to teams that have sneaky good pickups across the board that aren't the number one story on3. Like, I feel like, we talked a lot about John Mateer, right? And I think John Mateer is the single most impactful.
Who Miami went after.
Yeah. But he's the single most impactful singular transfer of this cycle. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
But I also wonder when it comes to maintaining, flipping, or improving a team, if the best way to do the portal is to pick up a FCS running back that was one of the best in that level last year, and a starting
who doesn't have to be the starter when he gets there, by the way. Yeah.
Defensive backs with experience, an all-American kick returner. Like, I feel like when you do things that aren't splashy, but you consistently upgrade the talent at positions, that's what makes your team better. So, like, I actually am all about this. Like, I don't think that, and if they didn't get any of these guys, I don't know that I would have thought going into it that they're screwed. I think that
Keelan Marion is the guy you're talking about, the kick returner from BYU, and he's also a good slot receiver. And they've gotten deeper at receiver in this portal cycle, but they've also they've got some young guys they're excited about that they brought in out of high school. So,
and one thing I know for sure is I think their lines are going to be good, and I think that goes a long way. In the SEC, they've got one of the best interior offensive linemen in the country, who might be a top 15 pick next year. JoJo Trader is a receiver that I think has a chance to break out. They're adding some.
They're excited about Malachi Toney as a freshman coming in. Right. Joshua Moore, they're excited about as a freshman coming in at receiver. And then
you could have made the case last year that Mark Fletcher was better than Damien Martinez at times. Like, I think that they have pieces. And then, of course, if Carson Beck is healthy and an above average quarterback, you are probably sitting with one of the 4 best quarterbacks in your conference.
And on the D line, they got Reuben Bain, who's a homegrown guy. Akeem Messidor was a West Virginia transfer, but he's been there long enough now that he may as well have been a high school signee.
But so, I do buy into the thought, Andy, that if you think that your 2 safeties and your 2 corners are all transfers and you're afraid of your secondary being bad, that's a fair assessment. But the
secondary was bad last year, though.
The team had the worst defense I'd ever seen outside of USC's 2 years ago last year, and I don't know if it could get worse than that. So you obviously want big improvement, but I actually like this blend of a lot of young homegrown talents that are coming up through the high school ranks, and then blending it in with guys who might not jump off the page in an individual recruitment, but when you put them all together and analyze it as a group. I am more willing to think that Miami might not fall off this year the way I thought that they could.
I think it's more of it's a filling needs situation, but it's also a building depth situation. You're in better shape if you're taking transfers who you think have upside, but you don't feel like have to start for you. And I think Miami's got a few of those this year.
Yes. I think it's going to be really, really hard to replace Cam Ward, Jacoby George, and Xavier Restrepo. I feel like, and Damien Martinez, it's not, those are your 4 most productive offensive players, and their offense was insane last year. So we have to acknowledge that they're replacing a lot, but Miami wasn't starting completely over. This isn't a Florida State 2 years ago scenario where they loaded up, went for it 1 year, and then the next year they lost everybody. I think that Miami's in a pretty good position to be an above average to pretty good football team this year.
Well, let's hear the Cane Sport guys talking about this, because they cover it daily.
Sure.
And it's one of those that, that they're covering the the horse race of it, like this guy committing, this guy committing, this guy committing. And so to hear Matt Shodell kind of take a step back and look at it big picture, that's what really caught my eye when I was watching this morning.
Miami now has taken 18 transfers, and I'm projecting 10 to 12 of them will be starters for game one, which is crazy. When if I took my time machine back 3.5 years to when Mario took the job at Miami, I would have said 3.5 years from now, this will be Mario's roster, which it is, by the way. The only player who's not Mario's hand-picked player, whether in the portal or recruiting, is Ryan Rodriguez on the entire roster. That's it. So I would have said this is going to be a 5-star, 4-star dominated lineup of guys who will be juniors, redshirt sophomores, and then a few free agents, But instead, he's taken 18 transfers. To me right now, there's probably 4 fairly clear free agents: Beck, Brockermeyer, Lucas, and Poyser. Just from what I've seen, because I wouldn't have called Lucas a free agent until I saw him, obviously because he was a backup last year. But the other 3 I would have called free agents. And Kante, I can't call him a free agent. Yeah, he was really good at Auburn, but after last year, it's like calling Bert Auburn a free agent. Like when you struggle that much that you get benched and your numbers are that bad, you can't just call that guy a free agent. He has to prove himself all over again. So that's really going to be the challenge for Kante and for this whole Miami team, because they need to mesh together.
So I want to steal that from Matt Shodell, by the way, the free agent designation. Like we need to actually have that. Like we'll have a meeting at On3. And by the way, that's Kane Sport. If you're a Miami fan, you're not subscribed to Kane Sport already. That's our Miami site at On3. What are you even doing? Like they are awesome. Gary Furman, Matt, they're fantastic. So I love the idea of like the term free agent in the transfer portal. Like free agent means this is a starter who's leaving for a better deal, not I lost my job and now I got to go somewhere else.
Yeah. Also, too, I know the thing that I've said on the show in the past, I don't know if I've said it since I've come to On3, that blows my mind, Andy, is that so many times a national championship can hang in the balance based on whether or not you make a kicker or a kicker makes a kick. And there's all this money that's being put into these programs from coaching and facilities and recruiting. You think about the budget and they don't have kicking coaches. Like it blows my mind. Like
I know.
It's like you would think, like I remember you and I and Stuart Mandel and Bruce Feldman were sitting in a hotel room a few years ago when Ohio State was playing Georgia in the semis, and they had a kicker who blew it right as the clock struck midnight. And I'm like, I thought to myself, like, they don't have a kicking coach. And maybe that's not the reason he didn't make the kick, but you would think this is a long way of saying, like, I think that like Bert Auburn's fine. And like, I feel like the lowest leverage situation of like lost your job at kicker is like, you can have a bad few months as a kicker because you're in your head and you're fine. Like, I don't know. We'll see how that goes. But I do think that there is a major distinction between improvement and because a person wanted a better situation and like fleeing a sinking ship because you're going to the bottom of the ocean at the place that you're at. Like that's a good thought. I never really thought about it, and I don't know if there's a way to make a distinction in the profiles of that. Like if there's like a green little circle next to their name in their portal profile if they were a starter last year and are improving, or if they lost their job or they haven't played yet is red.
Yeah, I that would be it. And look, there are some unusual situations, like the Keontae Scott one, the guy they just got who was at Auburn before. That's an unusual situation. He was good, changed positions because he wanted to change positions, was bad in the new position, but he was good at the old position, and it looks like he's going to play the old position.
Yeah, like what color circle would you put next to Jamison Williams?
Hadn't played yet, I guess.
I mean, he had played.
Stuck behind first rounders. That's really all it was.
First rounders stuck behind first rounders who goes to new place and is the most important player on an offense and then was a first rounder. Like, what color is that circle?
We have to come up with a new circle for that. That's like a gold circle. I don't know. Hey, if you're watching on Twitter right now, it's time to move to YouTube. The chat's much more fun in YouTube. It's much more interactive. And you can subscribe to the On3 Sports YouTube page, and you'll get a push notification every time we go live. So come on over. There's a link right below what you're watching on Twitter. It'll take you right to the YouTube page, and we'll get you set up. So let's all move over. to YouTube right now. Chat is lively. We got some questions. Evan in the chat wondering how Clemson made the playoff when Miami only had 2 losses. Well, Clemson lost 2 non-conference games and 1 ACC game, and Miami lost 2 ACC games. So Clemson was ahead of Miami in the ACC standings.
Clemson
made
also
the ACC championship game and won. So,
and winning the ACC championship, if you're unfamiliar, is an automatic bid.
well, yeah, top 5 highest ranked conference champs, which the ACC champ is probably going to be one of those. So, and we're actually going to be talking about that college football playoff seeding very shortly. But this Miami thing is very interesting. They were trying to get AJ Halsey from Houston, who he was the safety that went from New Mexico to Houston. He was an all Big 12 safety at Houston last year. LSU beat them for Halsey. So that was they were trying to even further bolster their secondary, but didn't get that one. But they've done a pretty good job, I think, filling the needs they had. And a lot of this is still going to come down to how good is that defense, because as you pointed out, massive liability last year. You know, they changed coordinators. Corey Heatherman comes in from Minnesota, which I think Corey Heatherman's going to be a good fit there. Mario Cristobal is a big Greg Schiano guy. Greg Schiano was very important in Mario Cristobal's development as a young coach, and Heatherman is also a Schiano guy. And I think they're very similar coaching DNA here. I think they're gonna get along pretty well.
Yeah, I'm torn on Miami. I'm torn.
Well, and I think like what Matt said in the Kane Sport video makes sense. Like, we don't know what this team is going to look like because it is so new. If you got half your starters played somewhere else last year, you don't know how they're going to mesh together. You don't know how they're going to gel together. Sometimes it's great and sometimes it's not, which, you know, Miami people should be fairly familiar with because they've watched Florida State see the best version of that and the worst version of that.